On a 4,000 metre runway is a slim margin, but it's better than a minus 139 metres.
What do we need for our approach speed?
146 knots.
146 knots? That can't be right. It's just too slow.
He gave us that speed to input into our flight management computer, and before I input it, I just had to think about it, and I thought that just can't be right. It's just too slow.
Maintaining the right speed on landing is critical. Too slow and the plane will lose lift and plummet to the ground. Too fast and they could run off the end of the runway and crash.
At 20 knots, can we still stop in time?
Good catch, Matt. Yep, 166 works.
I like to think that we sucked the brains dry of all the pilots in the cockpit to make one massive brain, and we used that intelligence to resolve problems on the fly, because these were unexpected events, the unthinkable events.
At the Qantas Operations Centre, Milne sees that Qantas 32 has begun its final descent. Now all he can do is hope the crew can safely execute this treacherous landing.
They're doing it. QF32's coming in.
He alerts personnel at the airport to prepare for the emergency landing of the biggest airliner on Earth. A landing that could end in disaster for 469 passengers and crew.
We know these guys personally, we know the cabin crew, and you know, it's a worry.
Singapore approach, Qantas 32, we're going to need a long approach, and better have fire services standing by, we're leaking fuel.
Roger, Qantas 32, you're cleared straight in on final, 20 miles.
The 5 seasoned pilots now use everything they've ever learned about flying.
Flaps 3.
To try to land their plane safely.
Here we go.
De Crepigny still doesn't know if his plane is capable of the precision needed for a landing.
4,500 feet.
He decides to find out while there's still room for error.
Okay, I'd like to do a control check.
An aircraft where the aerodynamic ability is unknown, you have to prove the aircraft to be safe to fly before you land. And they are called control checks.
Okay, let's see what you can do.
Captain de Crepigny rolls the plane carefully left to simulate lining up with a runway.
We had degraded roll control. We had lost 65% of our roll control. So I knew that we had to certify the aeroplane ourselves to fly before we landed.
Okay.
As he rolls the plane to the right, there's barely enough control to achieve the maneuver. He's quickly learning the limits of his damaged plane.
If the few flight controls that we have remaining are working to their limit, then clearly we have very little margin for manoeuvring when we come into land.
When we did those control checks, I thought it was a bit sluggish at the time, and I think Richard did as well.
The crew knows they'll only get one shot at lining up with the middle of the runway. There can be no last-minute adjustments. Now the crew discovers a potentially catastrophic obstacle.
Landing gear hydraulics are still offline.
The automated system for lowering the landing gear is damaged. They can only release the gear and hope it falls hard enough to lock itself in place.
Landing gear down.
Confirmed.
If the gear doesn't lock, the crew has no hope of landing safely.
For the landing gear, we just needed enough wheels to hold the aircraft with enough brakes to stop us.
It takes a full 2 minutes for gravity to pull the landing gear into position.
Full green. Confirm gear down.
You can hear the air noise change as the wheels extend. That's always a comforting sound to hear them come out.
We're always told anyway that the takeoff and the landing are more critical. So one was conscious that we were moving into a more dangerous time coming into land.
Qantas Flight 32 is now just 2 minutes from touchdown.
Better watch your speed, Richard.
Okay, just a little bit slower.
De Crepigny adjusts the throttle so that he'll touch down at the slowest speed possible, making it easier to stop.
Airspeed low. Damn, not that slow. Airspeed low.
The Airbus is getting close to stalling. The plane will lose lift and drop like a stone if the airspeed falls any lower. Too fast, and the plane won't stop before reaching the end of the runway. It's a precarious balancing act.
There it is. Speed is stable.
We sped up 3 knots, we would run off the runway. We slow down 1 knot, we get a speed warning.
De Crepney's ability to keep his plane lined up with the runway is severely limited.
Singapore, what's the surface wind?
170 degrees at 5 knots.
If the crew misses the runway, there's no way the crippled plane can go around for another try.
Everybody ready?
At the end of the day, it just came down to, I think we've covered everything. Can anyone think of anything? No. Okay, let's go and do it.
Confirm fire services standing by.
Affirmative. 100.
You think about your kids, you think about your wife, and that's just what you do, and then it was game on again.
50, 40, 30, 20.
Just a few feet from the ground, Flight 32's stall alarm again warns of impending disaster.
So that threw questions up in my mind. What is our performance? Is our performance correct? It doesn't appear to be.
We as passengers were not aware that so many things had gone completely wrong.
The plane is gobbling up 80 meters of runway every second.
We had lost 1 reverse. We had half the spoilers on the wings not working. We had the ailerons not making a speed brake action.
If they don't slow down quickly, they risk overshooting the runway and hitting terrain that could rupture the plane's heavily laden fuel tanks.
We just weren't slowing down.
Get into it.
Matt yelled out,
Get into it. Brakes.
Brakes, Rich. Put on the brakes. Pump them, push them.
Brakes. Full brakes, Rich.
I think I prompted him to brake harder, and he said,
My feet are flat to the floor. Keep it in, Rich. Hammer them.
Finally, after a grueling 2-hour ordeal, Qantas 32 comes to a stop on the same runway it took off from, with 150 meters to spare.
Hallelujah.
Beautiful.
Oh. Welcome to Singapore, guys.
I'm truly proud of everyone in the aircraft that day, the technical crew, the pilots and the cabin crew. And I'm really proud of the decisions we made, the way we worked as a unified, cohesive team.
I thought as I'm sure all the other passengers did too, that the crisis was over, that we'd landed back safely. It seemed like that was the end of the problems.
But with fuel leaking beside red-hot brake discs, the danger is far from over.
There was smoke coming from the left-hand undercarriage, and there was fuel pouring all around it.
Passengers could see the fuel coming out of the wing. We had alarm bells in the cockpit now. The situation was almost as bad as it was in flight after that engine exploded.
A plane that made a narrow escape in the air is now in grave danger of going up in flames on the ground.
I kept looking at my watch at that point. It was quite tense for me inside, in that I couldn't see why we couldn't get off.
This is the captain. I want the passengers in their seats until the fire crew does its job.
Why are they taking so long?
So it was important at that tense moment to lay foam and reduce the possibility of fire as best we could.
While the fire crew lays down fire-retarding foam, de Crepney faces a difficult decision. Keep the passengers on board or evacuate the massive plane.
And the only answer I can give to anyone saying why did or didn't we evacuate is, with someone in your home, are they safer in your home or are they safer somewhere else?
The argument for getting them off? British Air Tours Flight